Well, good morning, everybody. We're reading in Paul's letter to the Romans, and we read the first chapter already in two installments. The first installment, Paul told us the good news, and the good news is great news, that through faith in Jesus, we or anyone can have a right relationship with God. In fact, that's the whole reason we were created. God created us to love us, and He wants us to love Him and trust Him back. But yesterday, in the second installment, we read that many people reject this truth. And instead of trusting God, they believe that they know better. In fact, they worship idols like money and sex and power, and they even worship themselves. And when they worship anyone or anything else except for the one true God, the consequence is always separation. Separation from God, who hates sin, and then separation from each other, because we disregard God. And so, as we read through this first chapter, our first thought is to say, wow, yeah, Paul, you have described them perfectly. We are not like that. The world is divided into them and us, the real sinners and then us, because after all, we're law-abiding, generally decent, high moral standards sort of people. We're not gangsters and prostitutes and perverts. We're good people. But chapter 2 begins with a jolt. Let's read it in verse 1. It says, "You may think you can condemn such people, but you are just as bad, and you have no excuse. When you say they are wicked and should be punished, you are condemning yourselves, for you who judge others do these very same things. And we know that God, in His justice, will punish anyone who does such things. Since you judge others for doing these things, why do you think you can avoid God's judgment when you do the same things? Don't you see how wonderfully kind, tolerant, and patient God is with you? Does this mean nothing to you? Can't you see that His kindness is intended to turn you from your sin?" Paul tells us, Jews and Gentiles, men and women, children and adults, all races and economic standings, all of us are guilty. And when it comes to sin, there is no they, it is all we. Yet, even when we know this to be true, we tend to pass judgment on others and try to excuse ourselves. We like to point out what is wrong with society, but we're blind to our own faults. And I am very aware of what others are doing, but I don't recognize my own blind spots. I don't know myself nearly as well as I would like to think I do. So in Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, He helps us understand the extent of our sin. In fact, in one example, Jesus tells us that murder is a sin, and we kind of all agree on that one. But Jesus said if we hold a feeling of bitterness or hatred towards someone, it's really the same as murder. We say other people lie and cheat, but we just stretch the truth. And other people hold prejudice, but we just have convictions and discernment. See, Paul's whole true point is to make sure that all of us know that we are guilty of sin, more guilty than we think we are. And sin separates us from God and from others. And separation is His judgment for not keeping the law. We can't solve this separation on our own, but God has a plan. Now, please know that there is so much more good coming in this letter. In fact, just to repeat verse 4, it says, "Don't you see how wonderfully kind, tolerant, and patient God is with you? Does this mean nothing to you? Can't you see that His kindness is intended to turn you from your sin?" You see, this is not the end. God wants so much more for us. There is good news coming. So please keep on reading with us as we continue through this incredible letter of the book of Romans.
If these devotional videos are helpful to you, subscribe to our channel and click the notification button so you know when we post a new video. And of course, please share them with others.